somebody who didn't participate, you know, would like to do so, at least they can listen to it. So here we go. I'm going to share my screen, and I'm not the best at this, but I think you'll get you'll kind of get the idea, and I will certainly be willing to try different things if something doesn't work. So what I attempted to do, or what I did, was to pick a contest to try to encourage people to participate. And this is really a good one because the CQ-WPX is you can work anybody. You can work anybody on any band, 160 through 10 meters. There will be some people who will make 9,000 contacts during this 48-hour period. You know, it'll be incredible. And if every prefix is a multiplier, so everybody will be soft. So it'll be a lot of fun. And you can spend as little time or as much time as you want and have plenty of opportunities. As I said, I want to show you, I'm just going to go through this. I'm trying to focus on the contesting part, but unfortunately, or fortunately, depending on your perspective, I've got to show you some things about some particular tools or software that, because that's what you have to use. You have to use one or the other. And I'm an N1MM user. I'm not married to it, but I've used a bunch of the different ones over the years, and I like this one. And the primary reason I do is because I can work FT8, I can work CW, I can work sideband, I can work radio teletype, I can do any mode I'd like to with contesting with it. And here comes Mark. And you know, I can use basically the same setup with a lot of changes around. And it also, there's almost no contest that's put out that operates that you can't work with N1MM. And that's why I use it, for whatever, that just for your information. So I want to talk about operating techniques, particularly search and pounce versus running. I want to talk about just a little bit about operating strategies, just because that was one of the questions I got. I want to show you how to prepare a log for submission, because again, that's one of the questions that I was asked to address. I'll talk just briefly about transferring a contest log to a master log, and and I'll talk about what a master log is, and I think that's pretty important. Then there's questions. There's some questions that were posed to me, which I will try to go through and answer. The ones that I did not answer in the presentation material that I have. And of course, you guys sing out whenever you are, if you have a question, and I'll make an attempt to answer it. And if I get it wrong, Jim will sing out, and he can fill me in where I made my mistake. All right, so you know, you don't have to be very sophisticated equipment-wise for a contest station. Fundamentally, you need your transceiver, an antenna. You do need your personal computer and an operating system that goes with it. And I dabble a little bit in Linux. I've never found a good contest program for Linux, but there are quite a few other general logging programs for Linux that are pretty good. You do need to have rig control between your PC and your transceiver, and you need some sort of keying interface. And depending upon what kind of transceiver you have, there's lots of options here, and we'll talk about just a few of those. And you need some sort of contest logging program. And this is me. This is what I use. I got a K3 with a Windows 10 old Dell desktop computer, runs Windows 10. I run N1MM on it, and I use a device called a WinKeyer as my CW interface, and it connects via a USB port to the personal computer. I have a USB to serial converter that allows me to connect to my K3, and then I've got a stick a length of coax that goes out to my antenna, and I use just to fill it out here, that's supposed to be HF2V. It's 160, 80, and 40 meter vertical that sits out on the property next to my house. So that's just a typical station. With something like this and a little bit of operating expertise, you should be able to make, you know, between say 300 and 600 contacts in this contest that's coming up without too much difficulty. But I probably won't make that many because I have a lot of other things that are going on. But you know, you won't be with something like this, you won't be a top dog in the contest world, but you will be able to make a substantial number of contacts. So we got another gentleman who's coming in. I'll show up here in a second. Okay, so the tools. Contest logging software. Like I said, I'm recommending N1MM just because of the things that, let's see, how much, that's Mark. How much BIC does that? Oh, butt in chair, does that many queues need? Okay, probably. We'll talk about that when we get a little bit further on into the presentation, Mark. Okay, so another, as I kind of already talked about some of this stuff, one program supports multiple contests. You can run multiple modes, including digital, READY-N, FT8, FT4, that sort of thing. This is a link to the actual site where you can get N1MM. It also has all of the documentation on that link, and it's substantial documentation, 1,000 pages or so, because this program is complex, but as I mentioned, it'll do most anything for anybody. It is also capable of running multi-multi, where you have multiple transmitters with multiple operations operating one contest at the same time. You can run SO2R, as it's called, where you have one guy running multiple stations at the same time. So it's a very sophisticated software. But when you get down to the basics of just using, it's not too difficult. N3FJP is also another commonly used contesting program, and this is one of the several programs that this guy sells, and he has one for each contest. So it's not as widely, there's not as many contests that are covered, well, his work, but it appears to be a little bit less complex, and it does work quite well. I am not a user of it, so Jim, can you comment a bit?
Yeah, certainly. I got started way back in about 2002, and I don't know what the history of N1MM is. So basically, I came across N3FJP, used it for a couple of contests, found out that I could get the whole suite of stuff, and he'd give me credit for what I had already paid for. And so I jumped on it and got it and been using it ever since. And if you read my column in the bull sheet the other day, you see that I actually became an N1MM user. It's not that I'm unfamiliar with it. It's just that I've got the software and I use it, and it's really quite simple. And one of the advantages is that the logging program, what Robie mentioned as your master log, I use the N3FGP software called AC Log, and I know a number of people that use it. It's a very intuitive program, and certainly would rank in the top 5, I would think, for master logs. So anyhow, I'm available to answer any questions that you might have about that, but I don't want to take too much time away other than to say that I've been using it for quite a long time. I've got a good relationship with Scott. I've known him for many years, and so he's a good guy and writes good software. And we'll throw it back to you, Robie. Go ahead.
Okay, thank you. We mentioned 2 here because we were trying to keep this more or less straightforward in a discussion tonight with you guys. There are many other contest software packages, and some of them are quite good. They all have their pros and cons. Some of them are tailored towards certain types of contests versus other types. And you just have to do a little bit of research. If in your getting started in contesting or moving forward in contests, if you have questions, we'll be happy to, you can send them to me and I'll be happy to point out some of these other packages. I've used several of them, but I have gravitated toward M1MM for some time, but the other ones are still good. The other thing you have to have, and this question comes up a lot from fairly new older hams, is you got to have some basic computer skills, because it does take it to set these programs up. It does take that to get your rig working with your software package, getting your keying system working with your software package. So you just have to kind of bite the bullet on that. But it's not something that, you know, guys can't learn. I kind of tutor several guys to help them with this, and we've had pretty good success in moving them, you know, moving them forward so they can get to the requisite skills. You know, if you don't know what a USB port is, it's pretty hard. And some people don't know that. Okay, so you kind of have to pick the contest you want to work. And for this example, and because of the timing, we're picking the CQ WPX CW contest, which is occurring this weekend. I have a link to the rules. I don't know if it'll work or not. Let's try it to see. Can you see the rules?
Yep, absolutely.
Okay, so you can see that the bands, it lists the bands, it lists the exchange that you're going to send. So in this, you're going to send a signal report plus a consecutive serial number beginning with 1. And you can work any station once per band, depending upon what country you're in and what continent you're on, and what continent and country the other station is in. You get varying amounts of points for the contact. Each prefix also gives you a multiplier. So, you know, the basic premise of the contest is your score is equal to your total points times your total multipliers gives you your total score. And the contest software packages that we talked about, N1MM and N3FJP, they know these rules. So they take care of all this for you. So whenever you're here in North America and you work a guy in Africa, you get the right points and you get the right multiplier. You know, it works out for you. So you don't have to keep track of all of that. So that's one of the really neat things that you have with those packages. The contests, and these contests have a period. You have to operate within the period. This one starts at 7 o'clock tomorrow night and ends on 6:59 on Sunday night. And of that 48 hours, you can work, what, 36, I think, is the most that you can work. These multi-operator stations can operate the full 40 hours. So leaping ahead just to a second for strategy, if you look at the antennas you have, if you have antennas for bands that are good in the daytime, you probably want to segregate your operating time to the daytime hours versus the nighttime hours. You know, that's part of what you want to be thinking about. But your objective is to work as many stations and trade that off against the multipliers so you can get as many points as possible during the time that you operate. Okay, let's go back.
And can I ask a quick question on the?
Certainly. While I figure out what I'm doing here.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Let's say, you know, you got the call and you make the contact, and you don't catch all the, say, the number. You got the call, you know you got the call right, but the number's not right. And they're really going quick. Is it bad when you ask them, say, repeat the number, for example, or your serial? If you miss it after once, is it best just to go on?
No, ask again. And I'm going to talk about that later. I got a little slide for that. That's
All right.
one of the things I wanted to discuss.
All right.
That's one of your kind of your operating techniques. Okay, so not going into all the details, reading through the rules, we have basic choices of what kind of entry are we going, how are we going to participate in this contest? We have single operator versus multi-operator, high power versus low power, assisted versus non-assisted. Excuse me, I have the concept of overlays, and then I'll talk about my recommendation here in a minute. Excuse me. So single operator versus multi-operator, you know, say Jim and I might get together and decide we're going to work multi-operator, and he works 4 hours and I work 4 hours. And we just trade off shifts like that till, you know, through the 36-hour period. That's an example of multi-operator. Another example of multi-operator is multi-operator, multi-transmitter. It's called a multi-multi. So Jim would work one transmitter, I'd work another transmitter, Tim would relieve Jim, and Hal would relieve me. So that's a multi-multi concept. High power versus low power. Generally in the contest, there's several power limits, and all this is, so the power limits are QRP, 5 watts or less, low power, usually 100 watts or less, and then high power is more than 100 watts. It's usually the way this is broken up. So what we're doing here is we're segregating how we're going to enter the contest, and whenever we compare our score against others, we will be comparing our score against people in a similar category. In other words, I'm not going to be forced to compete against a multi station running high power if I'm a single operator, low power station. So that's all this is talking about. And if you look at the scores in the contest, you'll see that that's the way, and they offer awards or certificates or trophies or whatever for these various levels. Now, assisted versus non-assisted has to do with the use of spotting and the use of the internet to tell you what stations are operating where. It's your DX cluster, if you want to think about it like that. So if you have 100 contacts and they're worth a point apiece, you have 100 points. And if you have 10 multipliers, then your score is 1,000. If you have 20 multipliers, then your score is 2,000. Well, what the assisted group has is they have these little windows running. It tells them where these multipliers are, and so they can more readily find them, and they can change bands and go chase the multiplier. So that's one of that's the description of what's assisted versus non-assisted. And all of these software packages that we're talking about have this capability. You can work either way. And they have, I know N1M is really good for that period. Overlays generally is just another way to slice the participation. I believe if you go back and look at the rules, you'll find that there's a rookie overlay in the CQWPX, and that's for first-time contesters. They have a tri-bander and wires overlay, if I remember correctly, and that's somebody who has a station that's typically tri-band beam, say up 40 or 50 feet, and wire antennas on 80 and 40, you know, that sort of thing. It's just another way to segregate yourself. So you have to look at these rules and to kind of decide how you're going to operate. So my suggestion for this contest is that you operate single operator, non-assisted. That means you'll be running your station, one guy, one transmitter, and you won't be using the internet to help you find multipliers. Now, the reason I recommend this is simply because you'll focus on the core. The core is copying and making contacts. And that's where you're really trying to get good at. And I'm kind of taking this from a perspective of, okay, you start here and you work, and then the next contest you work in, you'll learn something on this one, and you'll be better in the next one, and then better in the third one, and better in the fourth one. But the thing that's common about all of this is copying, getting the exchange right, and getting the QSO done. You got to do that. And if you're one of these big 9,000 contact stations, they do that 9,000 times. It's the core of what you got to do. Kind of makes sense?
Absolutely.
Questions to this point? Okay. I want to do a little demonstration here. I think this will work. Like I said, I use N1MM, and so that's what I've got to show you. That's the software that's on my computer. So I'm going to give this a whirl, and we're going to see how it works. But to talk through it, in N1MM, you have to have a database to put your contests in, and it comes with one. And you can create new ones if you want, but we'll take whatever it has, and then I'll show you how to set up a contest. I'll go through the rig interface. I'll go through the CW keyer interface. I'll talk about your station data. Then we'll get into function key definitions and that sort of thing. So I hope this works pretty well. So let's see if it does or not. Okay, so here's N1MM on my computer. So is that legible for you guys?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's good.
All right. So N1MM always comes up with the last contest that you operated in. So that's why you have it. That's why it comes up this way. And this was, I used this, that's not very important here. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to set up for the contest this weekend, because I haven't done that yet. So I'm going to open the database that contains the CQWPX for me. And here's the database. I'm pointing to it here. I prefer to use one database for contest type. So all my CQWPX contests are in this database. You do not have to do it that way. You can do it any database you wish, but you just have to pick one. All right, so the database is open, and here's a contest, and I'm going to set up I opened the last contest it had, and you can see some of some of the stations I worked. You can see this is the actual log part of the program. Here's the main operating window, and here's the score, the running tally of the score. I use that just for my own edification, but it's not necessary. It's just something you want to do. So a new contest, so we go to File, we go to New Log, and we're going to work the CQWPX, and it's going to be 2020, starting at 5:30. And whenever we go through this and set it up, when we click OK, we will be in a new log. You'll see in a minute, we'll be in a new log with no contacts in it. And then we'll talk about how to proceed at that point. So there's the start date. The contest is up here. Now, as I mentioned, I want to be single operator. See, here's some of your options: single operator, multi-op. What band? You can focus on only one band, but I'm going to do all band. So that's simply my choice. Because I have a lot of antennas here, let's just say you only have a 20-meter antenna. Well, maybe you only want to operate 20 meters. So you be a 20-meter entry. You just changing the people that you're competing against whenever you make these decisions. Okay, so I'm a low power guy, so I'm going to choose low power. So here's high, low, QRP, and they haven't have a medium category, and I'm not sure exactly what that means. I'd have to go read the rules. This is a CW contest, so I'm picking my mode, CW. Sometimes contests are CW sideband and digital. Sometimes contests are RIDI only, you know, so I'm just picking what I'm going to be doing, which is CW. Now that makes sense because we're talking about the CQ-WPX CW contest. They have a separate contest for WPX for sideband and a second one and a third one for RIDI. So now I'm not using an overlay. So if you read the rules, you can understand what classic means, what tri-bander in wires means, what novice and technician means, what over 50 means. I guess we can figure that one out. And what a rookie is, right? So you just have to read the rules and decide how do you want to enter this. So now my station is fixed. So I'm just going to leave it at that. I'm operating non-assisted. So I have a choice of assisted or non-assisted. So I'm choosing non-assisted. And then time category, again, there's just another slot. With this contest having so many participants and it's so well participated in that they have lots of ways to cut. So you can say, all right, I'm operating for 6 hours. So I'm going to be competing against the other guys who operate for 6 hours, not the guy who operates 36 hours. So just another choice. I have one transmitter. I could have more than one. Two. Again, there are some definitions here which I'm not fully cognizant, but if you have a question, you go back to the rules and you'll find that these software packages really do understand the rules. So it's really a good tool. Now the exchange in the contest is a serial number. And here is a symbol that means serial number. And this is part of your keystroke, your macros and stuff in your keys. But the number sign means a number. So the way this program works is it goes to this setup to see what to send as part of the exchange. So it reads this and goes, aha, they want a serial number. So that's how that works. These are the operators. It's only going to be me. Now, if we were a single transmitter multi-op, whenever you operate in the contest, you can tell the contest log who's operating when, and it will fill this information in. It will go find what operators participated. Kind of complicated, sort of complicated, but not really. So questions? This makes sense to you? Kind of see how to see the flow. Now, what's really good about this is every contest in N1MM follows the same pattern. You're going to be doing the same things, whether it's the WPX or the CQ Royal Ride or the ARRL sweepstakes or the June VHF QSO party. The entries will be different because the contests have different requirements, but the process is the same. Okay?
Okay.
All right, so let's see. What was my next thing?
Robie, I had a question.
Yes, sir. Go ahead.
And I've run into this when I'm trying to run contests with N1MM. How do I get back to that screen if I need to change something? I've set it up wrong. I don't.
This particular screen we were just looking at?
Yeah, the contest setup screen.
File, and you go open log in database. There's two of them. There's a new log, which creates a new contest, and open log in database opens the existing logs.
Okay.
All right, so let's look at this. So let's open log. Now see, there's the ones that are there. There's 2020, 2019, 2018, okay. 2017, 2016. You know, I can look at any of them if I wish. That answer your question?
Yes, got it.
Okay, good. All right, so let's see what I was.
And also, Robie, it's quite possible that you might have set something up incorrectly, and you get to the end of the contest, and there's actually a way to correct these little single parts also. So
absolutely.
Yeah, so it's not as bad as you don't have to be absolutely perfect. You can actually make a mistake and get it fixed.
And you can carry that just a little bit further. You can actually, even after you make your contest entry, you can amend your entry if you need to.
Mm-hmm.
That's
So,
right.
I mean,
That's
I mean,
right.
they give you lots of opportunities. Let's put it that
Yeah.
way.
Yeah.
All right. So now we're going to talk about how to set up your rig control and your CW keyer interface and the like. And excuse me. So that's under configuration, and you configure ports, mode control, win key. That's the top entry. Let's see here. Okay. I'm not a good multi guy, so when somebody sends me a chat message, it takes me a minute. All right, so here's the configurer. Here's the hardware. So I'm selecting the port at which my radio is controlled on. I have two ports on this computer, COM3 and COM4, but the rig control for my K3 is on COM4, and I tell the program what radio is going to be connected to COM4. And I'm using an Elecraft K3, so that's what I tell it. I come over here to set, and it gives me the various details, right? I set the port speed, the parity, all that sort of stuff, and it gives me recommendations. It says suggested K3 settings, right? It's pretty straightforward. And since we're not talking about, well, okay, so this little section here has to do with how push to talk, how the transmitter is turned on whenever you're ready to send. And since the K3 does it automatically whenever you close the key jack, then you know, we don't have to worry too much about that one. But for digital stuff or other things, it can be a little bit different. Is that kind of clear? Not so clear? Okay. Now, I use a win keyer, and the reason I do is because Windows is a multitasking system, and if you use a serial port or a parallel port for keying, sometimes the computer will be busy when I want to send us some Morse code, and it will come out jittery or it won't come out like I want it to. So the win keyer is one of these devices that rides on the serial bus, and the program simply tells the win keyer in a very fast burst what the message needs to be sent is sent, and then it goes back to its computer business. And the win keyer is a computer, and it will go ahead and generate the code, and it's flawless. So it's a really good choice. So I simply tell it what port my win keyer is on, and that's going to be used for CW. And there are some details here about using the win keyer, which I won't go into too much detail on, just because there's probably other things we want to talk about. There's a function key page, and I recommend you do not monkey with this unless you really know what you're doing, because there's a Windows NM1M has a couple of nice features that you can mess up if you change this around into something it's not expecting. Here's my win keyer. Go ahead.
I'm sorry, Robie. On cut numbers and leading zeros, does everybody just not use them, or what's the general feeling?
Okay, so cut numbers is where you substitute an A for 1 or a T for 0. So you might be working somebody, and you'll hear da 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 do do do. You know, you'll hear a T. You'll hear these just a T in place of a 0 or an A in place of a 1. It's operator's discretion, and you're going to hear it both. You're going to hear all of them.
Okay.
And another thing you will hear along that same line is some people say send leading zeros, and some say not, because your first contact serial number is 001. Some people will send TT1, TTA 001 or just 1. And that's one of the things you have to be on your toes about, because you don't know what the guy's going to say. You don't know what the guy's going to do. But it's the general recommendation is not to send leading zeros. But Europeans love cut numbers. I don't use them myself, but they do. So that help?
Mm-hmm.
The only shortcut I use is when I'm sending a 599 report, rather than wading through the nines, you'll send 5NN, and that is the only cut number that I use. All the rest of them just drive me nuts, and I just rebel at the whole concept.
Yep. So it's okay to ask for repeats too. So, okay, one other thing in configuration to talk about is you have change your station data, and we got to kind of look at that. In this, your call sign, your name, your address, your grid square. This is stuff related to the entry. I don't think it's actually required, but I do it. I put it in there anyway. My ARRL section, which is South Texas, and my club, which is the Texas DX Society, and my email address. And this will come out in your log file whenever you generate that and submit it for your contest entry. So this is another place where you have to input data, but pretty straightforward.
Robie, if I could add in, for all of the contests that we enter under the club category, the club has got to be filled out as Texas DX Society, because it will not go into the right category if you put TDXS in. So it'll get reported as TDXS on paper, but it must go in as Texas DX Society.
Okay, cool. All right, so I'm going to jump back to the file menu for a second. I'm kind of doing it this way intentionally. So I'm going to open the login database again. So I'm going to go into the current contest, and I'm going to go up here to something called associated files. Now, your function keys are stored in a file, and that file is called default.mc in N1MM, whatever it comes out of the box. But I customize mine ever so slightly, and I give them a name and save them under that name. Then I come back and I tell the program that for the CQWW or CQWPX, I want to use the function key file called CQWPXCW, and I have the ability to change that if I wish. I'm not going to right now, but this takes me to the folder where those are stored, and I can use different ones. Of course, if I use the wrong one, I'll have a funky I'll have problems, right? Because I'll be sending the wrong information. That's what I choose to do. The defaults out of N1MM almost work. There's just a few tiny changes that you have to make them work. But that's, just wanted to talk about that for a minute before I actually go show you the function key files. Make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. All right, so function keys are the things that send the messages. So you don't have to bang it out on the paddle or your straight key or whatever you want. So this makes it work really fast, takes the real grunt work out of contesting. So you can see in the window here that I'm kind of pointing to. Here are your little memos that tell you what each function key does. And you can see the F4 is highlighted in orange, and I'll talk about that for a minute. So if I hit F4, You should hear my call. I think you can hear it. Hopefully you can hear that, right? And if you hit F3, and these are the messages that, you know, that I'm kind of choosing to use. If F8 is the one I like, I use that one a lot. Okay. So how do these messages get generated? So those messages are generated in these function key files. So if you go to config and you go down to change CW SSB digital function key definitions, and then you come over to CW, then you get let's make them bigger here. You get the definitions that you're looking for. And this is a little bit of like programming, and it's all pretty well explained in the documentation for each of these programs. And N1MM has two sets. It has a set of messages to use when you run. In other words, when you're calling CQ and expecting stations to respond to you. And it has a set when you're doing search and pounce, whenever you're looking for the station and you call him. And the messages are ever so slightly different, but they're different enough. And this is the way that it works. Some software, you simply have to choose which function key is the most appropriate and tap it yourself. And that's not bad either. It's just a different way to do it. So the first part of the message is which function key are we referring to? This little CQ is what appears on the name, if you want to call it. That's what appears here on the little display. Let's see if let's just do this. Let's find this one. I think I'll change my mind again on that. So go back. So that's what this character is. What's going to appear on your screen, and then here's the messages it's going to send. And this little thing in the curly braces is a variable name, if you're familiar with programming, and that's called my call. So the program goes back and looks in that contest configuration and finds out what is your call, what is the call to the station that's running the contest. It copies that call and puts it in there everywhere it sees my call. So you can do this another way. You can go in and simply type in your call here, erase the curly braces and erase all of that, and simply type in the call and save it, and it will work just fine. So you can do a lot of manipulating with this. Function 2 here is the exchange, and this says sent RST cut. This means to send the RST that's in the window and do it with cut numbers. So this goes back to what Jim had talked about. This will send 5NN or 58N or 57N rather than 599. And there's another definition, there's another variable name that will send the RST in full numbers. You have to look at your documentation to find out what that is. The exchange is that, remember when we talked about in the contest setup, I showed you the little number symbol where it talked about exchange. So again, this program goes back to the contest setup and says, what's the exchange? Oh, exchange is a number. So it sends a consecutive serial number. It sends a serial number for that. And there's, anyway, that's kind of the way that works. That kind of makes sense? Mm-hmm. All right, so this little macro at F5 here, his call, if you have a call typed into the window here, whenever it sees that, it will type whatever call is in that window. So we're doing a little substitution of little variables here. So that's what we're talking about. Now, with the search and pounce messages are a little bit different. Again, it's a little bit different, but it's not much different. And again, we have our friend F8, again. Send it over, send it over, send it over. That's kind of what I want you to do. So So that's kind of what I wanted to talk about here. These can be very sophisticated. You can have if statements in here. If you've worked a station before, you can tell him he's a duplicate. There's lots of things you can do, but we're trying to stay away from that since we're talking about making contacts. And when you get to be a little bit more experienced with this, there is no limit, as far as I know, as how far you can go with this. It's really powerful tools. Questions? All right, so let's say that this is the standard out of the block default set. It's not, but let's just say it is. And let's just pretend that I have modified it here to make it what I want it to call it. And I can come up here and say File, and I can say save these messages to a different function key file name. So I save that to another name, and then I can go back to the contest setup where the associated files are, and I can pick that name out, and it will follow whenever the next time I run the contest. That's how I made that. That's how I made my set. Is that straightforward enough?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, cool. Let's see.
If your rig has these functions built into it, is it better to bypass that and go to the computer?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay.
Because the way these packages are set up, not just in N1MM, but all of them are set up, it's expecting to run the show. So you don't need to do any of that in your rig. If you do, the program probably won't know what's happening.
Okay.
So you kind of want to have this as sort of the main thing. I put a copy of those in your little package I sent you because I didn't know if this method was gonna, how well this method was gonna work. So we're to the point now to talk about operation. So we're here at search and pounce, and I know you can't hear the radio because I don't have it on. I have my radio on, but it's connected to a dummy load. So in case I transmit, I don't interfere with anybody. So let's just say that, let me do one thing. I'll explain this in a minute, but I'm gonna make a change here. All right. So let's say I'm tuning across 20 meters and I hear N5DTT and I'm ready. You know, I get the call. That's the most important thing, in my opinion, is to make sure you get the call before you respond to the guy. Even if you have to listen to him 3 or 4 times, listen to him, get the call right, typed it in, then I want to respond to Jim, okay? I hit F4, it sends my call, sends it one time. So he didn't hear me or he worked somebody else. So it's my turn again. All right, he got me this time. So I'm going to move over. Within 1MM, the most appropriate spacing or tab technique is the space bar. So it assumes that the message that's going to be sent is 599, that I'm going to receive 599, and it simply goes to the receive number. All right, so Jim sends me 003, and then I hit enter. Oh, let's see what I have to hit exchange. So that was my exchange, was 5991. So he comes back with again. Okay. So I do it that way. All right. Now he comes back TU. Okay, I'm done. We got the contest. We got it in the log. So we hear another one. So we have say KH6RS. I do F4. So he comes back to me. I hit space. He comes back to me, and he's number 340. And I hit, so I come back to him with my 2. Now, if he comes back again, I just hit my F2 again. And see, here's the F2 exchange, the call sign. So I'm having to go to these these function keys, and they are simply repeating what is in the function key file. Now, let's suppose I've made a mistake, okay? So I want to edit the last call sign, the last contact I made. Say the call sign is not KH6RS, it's KH6RH, and I just figured that out. So I do Alt-E. Let's see if I got that right. I'll do it another way. I come up here with my mouse and I right click on it and I go edit contact. And there it is. There's all my information, right? So I just I strike out the H, the S, I put in an H, and I hit enter for delete. I hit enter for update. And this is the kind of the way that you correct your, you can correct your mistakes. Now there's other ways. I thought Alt-E would, or maybe it was Control-E. But the thing I'm trying to point out here is that N1MM really focuses you on use of the keyboard and not the mouse and not touching the radio. So the really fast operators just work from the keyboard and everything else just sort of happens. There are a million, almost, keystrokes that you can use to change the radio's frequency. And I'll give you a good example here in just a second. Let's say, okay, things are kind of slim here on 20 meters, so I want to go to 7025. So I simply type into the window, the call sign window, 25. I type in kilohertz, and I hit enter, and it goes to 40 meters. If I decide, whoops, I made a mistake, so I want to go back to 14.037 where I was before. It put me back on 14.037. You can see that there. That's one of the really neat features about this. This program is, this entry window is very smart. It knows a lot of things that can help you out. Now, another thing that you can do is, let's say that I'm still running search and pounce, and Alan calls me, and then I go. So I'm gonna hit F4. Now, rather than use tab, I'm gonna use rather than use space, I'm gonna use tab. So tab sends me to the sent RST. So he's only 579 for me. So it sent 579, right? Then I can do tab again, and he doesn't like me for giving him a low RST, so he sends me 599, right? And I put in my he's number 245 or 234, and I'm done. But you can see how we've got lots of flexibility here. But in most contesting work, the standard signal report is 599. So almost, honestly, I can't remember when somebody sent me given me some other signal report. I'm sure it's happened, but you know, it's just the way it's done. So you can save yourself a little time there. Okay, so let's say that I put a call in here and I say, let's K7RA, and I try a couple of times and I can't get this guy, and I'm giving up. It's time to move on to somebody else. All right, so I do Alt-W. It wipes it out. It's gone. And then it's clear, it's ready to type in another call sign or whatever. So there's lots of these little keystrokes that you learn when you use a program like this to make it fast. And once you kind of learn to get some of these basic, quote unquote, basic skills down, you can be really fast. You can do this in a real hurry. So that's why these guys can run up big scores using software like this. Oh, so let's see. So does
Robbie?
Yes, sir.
I use InterSense message a lot of times rather than the F2, but I'll alternate back and forth.
So I was going to talk about that in just a second.
Not a problem.
So just to try to show one way to do things. And the ESM function is really a cool function. So I want to see if anybody's got questions about this, and then we'll go on and talk about ESM. Okay, so ESM, enter sends message, is a function that you initiate in N1M here. It says enter sends message, and you can turn that on or off by using the keystrokes Control M. But I use it on. I leave it on most of the time myself. So I'm just going to click it here, and now you notice that one of my function keys is highlighted in gold, and it's my call sign. I'm in the search and pounce mode. So what the program is expecting, the next thing it's expecting to send is my call sign, because it knows that I'm listening for stations. And when I copy a station, you know, I'm gonna put that call sign in there. And then whenever I send enter, it will send this keystroke. It will send this macro, this F4. So here's an example. So we have Orville out in Nevada with the W7RN station he runs. So I copied his call, I hit enter. All right, so he sends, I hit space, it moves over to copy the serial number. He sends me my serial number, 123. I hit enter again. It ends, you know, it logs it. It takes the next basic operation all by itself. So I don't have to look and try to understand what is the right F key to send or anything like that. So it's a really cool feature. It's pretty fast. I've gotten used to it. It's basically all I use. But I don't know if other contest programs have something like this. WriteLog used to, but I haven't used WriteLog in many years, but it's kind of, so the idea is to, in search and pounce, is to be systematic, to find your stations you want to work. And because of the functionality of this program, I do not have to tune my radio. I can use the keyboard to tune the radio. So if you watch the frequency there, you see it went up 30 hertz. Went up 30 hertz each time. If I press the down arrow on my keyboard, it goes down. It goes up in frequency. And if I press the up arrow, it goes down in frequency. So what I do, or what I like to do when searching and pouncing, is I select a frequency range. I'm going to go 14025 or 025. It doesn't really matter. All right, so I'm there. And to make sure I get all of the stations that are calling CQ, I'm going up at 30 hertz at a time. And when I hear a station, when he starts coming in, 30 hertz is enough. It's a significant move, but it's not a move I'll miss somebody. I can come in right on top of him, and then I can copy the call sign and make that contact, and then I go right on up the band or go down the band, whichever way it is. But the the functionality here is I'm not just tuning around, you know, jumping back and forth. I'm being very systematic over a range of frequencies to find the stations that are there, and I'm trying to work each one of them in turn. If
Robbie, a couple of items. One, could you just show the one window where you can see the frequency a little larger? Number two, where did you make the adjustment to change the frequency of the up and down arrow keys?
Okay, so you could, I guess you could make another. I believe there's another way to show what the frequency is. This is generally good enough for me. This is generally what I do. This is fine.
I see. But when I'm looking at it on my end, it's very small. I'm saying if you go back on your share features and just share only that rather than the whole screen, it would
okay.
triple the size.
Okay. All right. So let's stop that. And let's do share screen here. Is that better?
Oh, yeah.
Oh man, a lot better.
Okay. So you see the 25, 14025.9 there? And you see each time it goes up or down by 30 hertz. Okay. So where's that set? It's, so we go back to file. Let's see if I can remember this. It's file. Open login database. Nope, sorry, wrong one. Configure. That's a good question. So here under other,
There you go. Yeah.
tuning tolerance.
It's there. There you go. Just to the, there. Yeah. You got it. Yeah.
That's where I make that change. And I've experimented with different values. I like that number myself. You might like a smaller number. It's a trade-off between speed and missing somebody, because it takes a lot of taps to get up, you know, throughout the band, particularly if there's nobody there. But the thing you got to remember is guys are calling CQs fast, and they're not. And at high speeds, it's only a couple seconds that they're there. So you can actually skip over somebody pretty easy. But if you're using this technique, you won't get, you'll hear them either, you'll hear them just below you or just above you, and you can kind of sneak up on them. So you don't miss them.
Robie, what filters do you use on the K3?
I have, for CW work, I have a 400 hertz filter, and I mostly tune it down to about 300 hertz.
Okay.
That's what I typically use. But, okay, is that helping?
Mm-hmm.
Okay,
Probably
cool.
the big help was changing and highlighting just the window that we're looking at, that double the size on my screen.
Excellent. Sorry about that. So that's my technique for search and pounce. I find it to be effective. And typically what I will do is I'll go to the bottom of the band and work up. And by the time I get to the top of the band, I can go back to the bottom of the band and start again, and I will find new stations. Propagation has changed. Stations have decided to change where or what band they're going to operate on, all that sort of thing. The thing that you will run into is you will run into one of these multi stations who's got a 20-meter run station on 14018, and there'll be the whole contest within a few kilohertz of 018, and they'll be calling CQ test. And that's that guy's job, and to work as many stations on 20 as he can. Somebody else will be working the multipliers, but he'll be working it to make as many contacts as possible. And you'll find him on that frequency over and over again. So that brings up another point. You try for a few times on the station like this. If you don't get him, go on up the band. There's another fish, there's another guy to work, you work him. When you come back 10 minutes later, that guy's likely to still be in the same place if he's making contacts. So you get another shot at him. Conditions have changed. Conditions may go worse or they may go better, but you can have another shot at him, right? So you don't spend 20 minutes trying to work one station. Give it 3 or 4 calls, 15, 20, 30, 40 seconds, a minute or so, move on. Because
and I can add a little to that, Robie, and that is that a lot of times when a station first comes on the air, a lot of people want to work it. So after you try 2 or 3 times and you don't get through, like Robie said, he's going to be there later on, and he's likely going to have worked all of those really aggressive people, and now you're going to have a chance to get your call in edgewise.
You know, for a new guy, one of the best times to work a contest like the CQ WPX is Sunday afternoon.
Right.
Because the big guys are thirsty. They need contacts. And a lot of guys have already they've already put in their time. You know, it's pretty cool to see that. But you're right. You get several shots in general at a station during the time of the contest. So
Robie, the green and red buttons.
okay, so that's transmit and receive. So let's see what happens here. So so it's just part of the functionality of the program. Now, here's your speed. You can run any speed you want, any speed within the limits of the wind keyer, which is far outstrips mine. If you mouse over that and you use these keys, there's a way to make, there's several ways to change.
Page up and page down. Robbie moves it.
There you go. Like I said, there's tons of options here. So I wanted to talk about running a little bit. Of course, running is different. You try to find an open frequency, which you have to, and at low power, sometimes that's hard because the stations will move in on you and take over your spot. But with running, you can generally get higher rates than you can searching and pouncing. But you have to depend on the guy to hear you. So if you have a potent signal, you can get a lot of return for it. If your signal's not so potent, that's one of the trade-offs. That's one of the strategy trade-offs that you work at. But running with this ESM is a breeze. One of the things I love about it is, when you're running, you got to be transmitting to be heard. So you don't want dead time. So one of the really neat features about this program is you can do, let's see here, Alt-R. I've got CQ repeat on. So every so many seconds, this thing will repeat a CQ. So I don't have to sit here and copy the key or hit the keyboard. So here's an example. And in about 5 or 6 seconds, it'll do that all over again. Then if I hear somebody, anytime I touch the paddle or if I type a letter into the call window, it automatically stops. And so this is it's a really neat feature of this program. And you can turn it on, you can turn it off, but this is it's a great feature because to workstations, you got to keep transmitting because the search and pounce guys tune in like we were before. And if you're waiting 10 or 15 seconds between sending CQs, you're going to miss a lot of guys. So, it's all about rates whenever you're working run. So you want to keep that signal out there, and you want to be able to keep the contacts coming. What I have found is if I go to a run frequency, I establish myself on a run frequency, and for 20 or 30 minutes maybe, I'll be able to work new stations. And then it's like the well is dry. I'm not working anybody. And after a few minutes there, after a few minutes there, I try to find another run frequency because like I said, they're kind of worked out there. So with running with a low power station, I'm generally moving my run frequency around as compared to a really big station with high power may stay on, as I mentioned earlier, one of these multis may stay within a few kilohertz of one frequency for the entire contest. So a couple of questions have come up. What speed? Well, you run whatever speed you're comfortable with. Particularly on Sunday afternoon, a lot of guys will slow down for you if you're kind of slow because they want to contact. They need to contact. Personally, I usually run somewhere around 27, 28 words a minute. That's what I'm comfortable at. That's when I'm working this contest, that's about where I will be. Maybe a little slower sometimes, but hardly not much faster. That's just my personal preference. Another comment I made earlier was you could probably work 300 to 600 contacts. So you're looking at your rate. One contact every 10 minutes would be, so 60 into, I'm trying to get this straight in my head here. A contact a minute would be 60 an hour. So you can generally get a contact easily a contact every 3 or 4 minutes. So you're probably looking at 20 to 25 an hour. So to get, so at 20 an hour, you have to be on 15 hours to get 300. So that's called BIC, butt in chair. That's the biggest variable in contesting. If you're not on, you can't work anybody. And even if you're working at a low rate, your contacts are still adding up. So contesting to a certain extent is a duration activity. And so that's one of the things I talk about is trying to get, trying to have a target. So, or goal. So I say, okay, I'm going to have a 500 contact contest. All right. So I try to look at what that means. I know, okay, I can, how many an hour do I think I can do? Can I do 30? I try to do the math and I try to block out those, block out that much time. Because if I got to run to the store, if I got to do this or cut the grass or whatever, it really disrupts me accomplishing my contesting goal. And I'm not saying those other things are not important, but sometimes you have to set some priorities somewhere along the line. And that's one of the big things. Now, so does that answer the question? I think that was a couple of questions that were asked. I sent, or there is a list in the documentation of all these shortcuts, and they are extensive. And the only way I know how to do it is to practice them and memorize them. And after a period of time, it will become short order to you. It really will. So questions? So is this the kind of stuff you were hoping to hear, or kind of like what you were hoping to hear?
Yeah, Robie. I get one question if you're running, not that I'm going to, but if you say you didn't get all the call, you got W5, you type in W5 and you hit his call, is it just send W5 question mark or
Let's
W5?
just let's see what it does. So what it did is it said, hey, the whole call is W5, which is not the best thing to do. So if I didn't get the whole call, I do F8. Or I would hit my paddle and go. I'd do one of those two. I'd probably go to the paddle. Now, another thing you can do with N1MM is you can hit Alt or, whoops. Alt J. What was it? You hit Control K, and then you comes up with a little send CW window, and then you're sending off the keyboard. And if you hit enter, that window goes away. So it's Control K and puts you in that little window. So you can use that, you can use your again, or you can use your paddle, whichever.
F5 is another one.
Yeah, F5 is the way this is structured.
But it does not send the question mark, so you'd have to add that in there.
Yeah. So again, how do you structure your macro, your function keys? There's different ways to do this, and I'm not telling you mine is the best. I'm just showing you what I do. Okay. And I usually go to the paddle. That's that's my method for that. Or sometimes you'll get several stations calling you, and you'll get a W8, and you'll get a W7 and a K86. Well, which one do you want to work? You know, you have to kind of help them figure that out. If you just send again, they'll all come at you again. If you use your paddle and say K86 question mark, well, hopefully that's the one you'll get. They don't always listen, but you can try. You know, they're not always a cooperative bunch. Okay, so wanted to talk about strategy just a little bit.
Before you get there, I had another question for you,
Go ahead.
Robbie.
Yes, sir.
And this may be one that you're going to put in strategies, but for instance, if you type in my call in there, does it give you a check mark?
All right. So let's see. Let's try a call we've already worked. Tells me it's a dupe. Now, I can set this up so it'll tell him worked before, but it clearly tells me that it's a duplicate. Is that the kind of question you're asking?
No.
Okay.
When you put in a call that's a valid call, say K5GQ, do you get a check mark? No, don't get anything.
Nope.
Do you have it set up so it will check the database of all the calls?
No, I do not.
Try the space bar.
Now, he does not have a call history in there. So normally if your database is functioning, it will give you a check if it's a registered call in the database.
So in that database, that's a call that is known to be good, right? And this helps you prevent mistakes because you get deductions in your score from copying incorrect calls and that sort of thing. So it's another tool that this program offers that gives you an advantage. This coloration will also change if it's a multiplier and you know you're on a different band. And there's a lot of things that we could spend a week talking about it, I think, but there's a lot of things that this program will do for you to help you out. If you're a true master of it, you can do some phenomenal things.
Is using the band map, as long as you're not connected to Telnet, considered assisted or non-assisted?
Yes, it is.
It's assisted or no?
Yes, it is. Yes.
Oh, okay.
Okay, that's a good question.
Any use of anything but your hand and your ear.
So a couple of things I like to do. You see one here, I kind of keep track of my score. If I've got a goal for scores, I kind of do that. Another one that I like is max rates. And if I can shrink this down a little bit, kind of tells me, where am I on my rate? And this one over the last hour or, whatever it might be, it kind of gives me a clue. If I'm trying for 25 or 30 an hour, it kind of tells me, hey, am I making it or not? It has so many features. It's kind of hard to talk about them all and cover everything. Okay, another thing about, we talked about goals. Goals is really important. And a goal I'll throw out here is I use contesting to further my other objectives. I'm an avid DXer, and particularly on VHF, I'm an avid grid chaser. So I participate in contests to increase my band countries or my grid squares and to work new countries. So a lot of my time is spent doing that, not necessarily in pursuit of the highest score. So that's a goal. I'm not arguing it's good or bad. That's just what I do. If you set a goal, you're more likely to do well because you have something to measure yourself against. So as I mentioned, for this weekend, 200 contacts, 300 contacts, 100 contacts, whatever your goal might be, will kind of help gauge you, you know. So, you know, as we talked about, if your goal is 100 contacts and you're working about 20 an hour, well, you know, it's going to take you about 5 hours more or less to get that, unless conditions get radically better or get radically worse. That's about how much time you're going to have to spend in the chair. And that is one thing you have control over, is the time. Now, multipliers versus QSOs, you know, you get so many points for a QSO, but the multiplier gives you, can give you a lot more points. So that's a trade-off. That's a classical trade-off. And I don't have any magic for you there. It's easier to work add up multipliers, to get more multipliers if you're an assisted station than if you're a non-assisted station. But you just have to make that decision. Which bands are open is another part of the strategy. I have heard people say that it's good to go to the highest band that's open. You're looking at, like for the WPX, you get more points for stations that are in different countries and on other continents. So DX is certainly a significant, you know, portion of this. So staying on, you know, 80 meters might not be the best decision, you know, because it might not have the open. If 20 is open to Europe, it's probably better to be on 20 going to Europe than it is on 80 working in the States. Even though you might make more contacts on 80, but you get more multipliers on 20. So I have no magic answer for you there. That's the trade-off that you have to work against. Rate is also another kind of a strategy issue. Do you run or are you searching pounds? And that folds right into the multipliers versus QSOs part. Assisted versus non-assisted, we've talked about that several times. Studying your propagation, knowing what your propagation is likely to be is a good tool. Figure that out before the contest and make you some sort of a plan. I guess if you use some of these online propagation tools during the contest, that probably puts you into an assisted category, but I don't know that. That's not something I do, but there are certainly a lot of tools that would help you out there.
Yeah, propagation tools are allowed in the unassisted category, but the things that they're most worried about as far as assisted and non-assisted is being hooked up to the internet, where you get direct information regarding calls available, basically call signs that are available, and that's real secret, the secret to that. But knowing what propagation is, if you're suspecting that 10 meters is going to open to Europe, you probably ought to have a screen up that has the maximum usable frequency map up, so that you know where 10 meters is creeping across the Atlantic Ocean, so you know when to start trying. Okay, good. So a question that was posed is about code speed. If you find some of these really big stations that run really fast speeds, because I guess theoretically there's a limit at 20 words a minute of how many contacts you could make during the contest. Some of these guys are really fast. I personally think that above about 30 words a minute or so is probably counterproductive. Again, it's my opinion, not necessarily fact. You have to run where you're comfortable. And if you run across somebody that's really fast, if you come back on Sunday afternoon, he'd be willing to slow down on you if propagation allows it. So that's a trade-off. If a guy is really, really fast and you just can't copy him, don't waste your time. Go on to somebody else. You know, you just, if you call him at a comfortable speed for you, he may slow down for you, he may not. It seems that these guys in CN, they're off the coast of Africa, they seem to have the propensity to run in middle 30s to high 30s words per minute, and they work a lot of stations. And
I can copy that fast if the signal's not too weak, and that's the way I work those, and they don't seem to slow down for anybody. But you know, it's an operator preference thing. So one of the like I said, one of the questions was asked is about what do you do about a high-speed guy? If you can try to see if he'll slow down to something that you can handle. If not, you know, go and work 10 or 15 other stations and don't worry about it. Early versus late participation, you know, for your goals, we've talked about that quite a bit. It's just kind of up to you. But getting started, if you have a modest goal and you really want to improve yourself and you need to practice to improve, late participation could be a very good thing because you get, you know, people that are more you're a little bit more comfortable with. Again, my opinion. Okay, is that enough? That's what I had to say about operating. Questions, comments? Okay, so now the contest is over. So now what do we do? All right, so with a program like N1MM, we got several options. So one of the things we need to do is to, we need two kinds of files. We need a Cabrillo file for contest submission, and we need a ADAF file for importing into our master log. So here we have generate a Cabrillo file, and then it comes up and asks you some questions, and it asks you again, this is a single operator, non-assisted one transmitter, all band CW, is this right? And yeah, it's right. Okay, so then here's a file called AJ4F log, and I'm going to create a folder to put this in. I'm just going to call it test, just for grins. And I'm going to save that there. And then it says, hey, you want to edit this? So at least I want to look at it. All right, so there it is. There's what the start of the log, the version, where I am, my club, what contest it is, how I'm entering, all those things that we entered into the contest, my address, my name, my address, you know,
it's not showing, Robbie, on mine.
Okay, let's see how to do that because it is in a different window. Please be patient. All right. One second here. Sorry, guys. Share screen. See it now?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, so here is the AJ4F log. This happens to show in Notepad, and you can see my location, my call sign, what club I'm a member of, what contest it is, all the data. And this is the raw contest data. This is what the contest sponsor is wanting to get from me. So I have that. I can submit that, and I'll show you. We're going to go through that in just a second. Okay, so let me stumble around here for a minute and do some other things. Okay, so sorry, guys. All right, so here, wrong, sorry, wrong one. Okay, so here we are again. We go back to File, and then we want to export. And we want to export an ADIF file. Can you see that?
Yep.
Okay. So then I guess that's still visible. So let me find my directory. There's test, there's where I want to put it. But see, that's my AJ4F.ADI. and I save it in that in that same folder. Okay. And one thing I like to do, because I like to submit my scores to 3830.scores. Now I'm going to skip that because we're running a little bit long, a little longer than I had, but I'll go ahead and talk about submission. All right. So. Oops. Okay, so you can you see my outline, or do I need to show that? I guess I need to show that. Share. There we go. Okay, see the outline there?
Yep.
Okay, so log submission. We're going to submit the Cabrillo file online to the contest sponsor. This is my official entry. So I click on that, and can you see the web page, or do I need to share that?
No, you've got it.
Okay. Now see, here's the Cabrillo log upload on the Worldwide WPX contest page. And I got to just check which one it is. This is the CW contest. I'm low power, 100 watts. Did you use spotting assistance of any kind? And no, I did not. How many persons operated during the contest? Just one. Now I can either cut and paste that Cabrillo file in there, or I can choose the file. And anyway, so what I'm in is in the menu. I'm in the or the Windows menu system. And I'm just going back to that folder where I put those logs, and then I'm selecting the log and I'm putting it in. And see, it says here, it says AJ4F log. And if I click next, it will import that log into the contest system. And it will tell me if there's any errors or not. If there are errors, I can correct the errors, and then I can resubmit, or I have some options at that point. But this is how you make that official entry, and this will be your official entry into the contest. And if you have made a mistake, you find out later, and you need to change it, then you can resubmit. So that's how you make that official entry into the contest. And whether you have 5 or 6 contacts like I had in my little pretend log, or if you have 5,000 or 6,000, it's all the same process. It just takes a little bit longer to move the file. Okay, questions? All right, so the other thing that I wanted to talk about the master log. Now, the way I like to do this is, I'll show you in just a second, is I use a program called DX Labs, and it has a log in it that allows me to keep all of my contacts in, and keep track of the awards I'm looking for, keep track of just anything, any and everything, literally. So when I work a contest with it, but it is not a contesting program. It is a little bit awkward to use. It does have a contest mode, but even at its best, it's pretty weak. So I use N1MM, and then I get ready to import that file into my master log. And I would strongly suggest that if you don't have a master log program, DX Labs, N3FJP, Logic, Log4OEM, there's a whole bunch of them. But this is the best way to go. And it's really pretty simple. So let's see if I can show you how to do that. Maybe I need to even. Oh. Well, I'm going to do it this way. If you'll give me just a second here. Okay, so I have here is my log master log program. The log portion of it is called DX Keeper, and it has this functionality. I can go to import QSOs, and I can go down here to start, and it will take me to a screen that allows me to go back to, let's see. There's a method to my madness, which I'm trying not to go through all of that, but I open up this folder where I had test, and there's my log. There's that ADIF file version of the contest log that we just generated. If I click open, it will pull all of those contacts into my master log, and then from that I can upload them into LOTW, which is what I choose to do. But or if you're an EQSL guy or a club log guy or whatever it is that you use, and then if I say I make 300 or 400 contacts, they're all there. They're all in the right time, and they're identified by contest. So I can find all my CQ, WPX, CW contacts through all the years that I've operated that contest by filtering my master log on that, using that criteria. So that's a kind of another subject. So that was one of the questions that was asked, I think. So does that make sense for you guys?
Yep.
Okay, cool. All right, let's see. All right, so what other questions do you have? Because I have a few more that I'd like to go through, unless you guys have talk about any questions about things I've seen or done or not done for you. Okay, let's see, get back on share. Give me a second here.
Robbie, I had a question that's sort of generic.
Okay.
Rick, W5SD, has a flex radio, and wonder if one of our members has a flex radio. He does not have a wind key here, but wonder if somebody might be able to help him.
Well, I think so. Flex owners, Scott K5DD, Doug WB5TKI, both have flex radios. So I'm sure one of those guys could provide some assistance.
Who was the first guy you said besides Doug?
Scott.
Scott.
K5DD. K5 Delta Delta.
Okay.
And I'm sorry, who was the second one? It was Doug, W5.
WB5 Doug, WB5 TKI. Scott is the webmaster. K5DD is our webmaster, and Scott is our Scott's our webmaster, and Doug is our secretary of the TDXS.
Thank you.
Certainly. Okay, so I think here are the remaining questions that I had I wanted to provide answers to. Does the club have a station, contest station where members can participate and learn by watching? No, not really. Traditionally, that's been the role of field day with the get on the air station and that sort of thing. But it is, so, I mean, that's just the answer to the question. Is there a decoder, a CW decoder that actually work? Well, I know of two that work, and they both interface with N1MM. One of them is CW Get, and the other one is FL Digi. And I've tinkered with both of them, and they do actually function. And WB5TUF, Glenn, does some contest work with CW Get. So they do, they are functional. They're, I mean, probably better than me under some conditions. So another,
Robie, there's also another one. I need to look him up to see who he is, but let's see if they can get it up on the screen here. Okay, there's a program called MRP40, written by a fellow by the name of Norbert Pieper over in Germany, and Frosty, N5LBU, turned me on to it. You know, Frosty did a lot of DXing from over in Africa, and he was not a great CW operator. He much preferred single sideband, but occasionally he had to work the single side, or got off of a single sideband and got on to CW. And this is the program that Frosty used to make it so that he could copy everybody, and he was very pleased with the program. I've used it for a number of years, so I'm very happy with it. So if anybody needs any information on that, just n5dtt@awrl.net, and I'll send you the link.
very good. And just to comment, the K3, the Elecraft products, has a built-in CW decoder, and along with a few other things like that. So it's pretty interesting. So there's some technology that can help out there. So another question, we've already kind of talked about this, the master log. Several different programs, but the concept kind of replaces the paper log. It consolidates all of your contacts together. It allows you to chase awards and that sort of thing. And I find that to be very useful. I have about 60,000 contacts in mine. I know I was talking to Alan the other day and about N5XZ, and he was trying to get, his goal is to finish the year with 200,000 in his. So, you know, they're powerful tools. They're just databases, but they're powerful tools. My general logging program, along with N3FJP and the others that you use, will also allow you to operate CW and all your and a lot of your other modes and things directly from those. So you have kind of a, you know, you don't ever have to write anything down. You just put it in the log, and it stays in the log. Again, just to carry on from that, these logging software, they control the rig, they do CW operation, PSK, READY. Some of them will interface directly with WSJTX for logging the JT modes. Examples are Log4OM, DX Labs, Logger32, N3FJP. If if you're a Linux man, CQR log is a pretty good one, written by a German guy. So it's a pretty good program. It runs on Linux rather than Windows. Another question I got is split frequency critical for a new contester? Split doesn't play too much of a role in contesting. Sometimes you will find DX stations that will operate split if they're kind of rare, but I haven't run across that very often at all. Do we enter as a club member? Do we enter as a club member as part of the club or an individual or both? Well, we actually do both. A lot of contests have club and team competitions. You just have to check the rules. Some contests have distance restrictions for club participation. In other words, if you're located more than X number of miles away, you can't be included, that sort of thing. Some contests have team participation that requires sign up before the contest. In other words, you have to pick your team before you play the game. So Jim, our contest chairman, is the guy that we look to give us guidance on that. Do you have any comments about this coming weekend, Jim?
Nothing about this weekend, or other than the only there is a team competition, but the only thing that you need to do is be sure that you put Texas DX Society in as your club, and their software will glean out all of the TDXS people and put them all into one bucket as a score for that part of the competition. But that does not mean that your score for your individual effort is not recorded. This is just over and above what is already recorded for your participation. In other words, you'll get a score and the club will have a separate score. So that's all there is to it. Now, the contests that do require sign up are the NAQP contests. And there are 3 of those contests twice a year. And there we will put a call out the week before. And now that I'm putting out a weekly message of upcoming contests, this will be a perfect opportunity to start forming the clubs a little quicker than we have in the past. Typically what I do is I maintain a spreadsheet of your previous scores and your previous participations, and what I'm going to go with for the number 1 team, the one that is labeled TDXS period, I will go with the highest scoring, most often participating individuals. And this is the same protocol that Potomac Valley, our Central Texas DX Contest Club follows, and the same thing that the DFW club does. And that is, they're going to put one team of their very best people out there so that they can claim that really high score. And if you've noticed, there are a number of people that feel very strongly about the DFW and the Central Texas clubs, especially when it comes to the Texas QSO party. Now, the real beauty of this is that we, as TDXS, actually scored higher than the DFW Contest Club in the last Texas QSO party. So guys, we need to be very proud of ourselves, because that is a first.
Cool.
At least a first within my membership within the club. Now, I know in previous years, TDXS used to wipe Texas clean as far as how everything turned out. So maybe we'll get back to those days again. We hope so.
Yeah, could be a lot of fun. Okay, let's see. So I think I have covered everything that I was kind of asked to look at or talk about. Do you guys have any questions about anything I've said, I didn't say, I've shown or didn't show, or anything else?
Robie, I'm good.
Cool. Glad to hear that.
Robie, I'd just like to say, this is Tim. This has really been fantastic, especially for someone just getting started and getting interested in, and this has been just wonderful. So I thank you very much.
You're welcome. And that's that was the goal. That's why I kind of targeted, we could dig into any one of these topics in a lot of detail, but the idea was to try to go from stem to stern and kind of let you know what the whole process is for a contest. And we can do this, like we got field day, they finally made a decision about field day. We're going to be able to aggregate scores for club competitions in field day. So I think the drive will be to try to get as many people on operating field day as possible. We can, maybe go do something like this to help get set up for field day. with your own station for one of these contest programs. We just have to, raise the questions and see if we can do something like that.
And Robie, I'd like to say that one of my personal goals is that we somehow find a mechanism of being able to go back to one of the previous questions, and that is to have a club get together. And of course, field day is that kind of thing, but it's the only thing right now. I was long ago a member of the Houston Amateur Radio Club, HARC, and I can still remember the Saturdays, the Friday nights and the Saturdays and Sundays going to the club headquarters there on Yellowstone and operating, and it was invaluable as far as being able to learn the ropes. And I would love someday for one of us to get rich enough to win the lottery and to be able to set up a station somewhere that we could all get together and do a multi out of.
That would be cool.
That's sort of a personal goal, and I can assure you that if Saturday night I win the lottery, I will let everybody know Monday morning that we're going to set that up.
I heard that.
Hot dog, that sounds great.
Because the bad news is that's the only way it's going to happen.
So, this is the 50th year of the TDXS, and I'm still hoping that sometime if this virus thing subsides a little bit, maybe this fall we can get together and have some sort of a group outing. And what's in my mind is an operating event with some food somewhere, kind of like a mini field day, even if it only lasts for a day or half a day, that kind of thing. And we could use that as an opportunity to foster some of the things you're talking about. I'd really love to see our club call, K5DX, would be the call. It would be really great if all the members could operate, for a period of time and make contacts for K5DX. Something like that would be really cool.
I enjoyed it during Texas QSO, Robbie.
Yeah.
Also wanted to thank you for allowing a couple of my CW Academy students to join in tonight.
Absolutely. Perfectly happy to do that. Okay, guys, this session has been recorded. It'll be available. I don't know. We generally do these things when we get together. We do these things and we record them. I'll give it to Scott, but if there's several people who didn't get to participate today, maybe they can garner something from listening to this. And we appreciate your interest, and sending me your questions. And this has been a good thing.
It has been.
Thank
Very
you.
much so.
Yeah, thank you, Rob.
Thanks, guys. It was great.
Okay, guys, have a good evening.
You too.
Okay,
Thank
you
you.
too.
7-3, guys.
Bye-bye.
Good night.
Good night.